Namaste and welcome back to session 2 under the theme Vishayam Characteristic Indian Epistemology Part 2, and we have Pravrajika Divyanandaprana ji from Sri Sarada Math, and she would be taking a session on Arpan, Samarpan and Tarpan. A brief on Pravrajika Divyanandaji. Mataji, as she is popularly called, is a monastic member of Sri Sarada Math and editor of the English journal Samvit. She is an initiate of revered Swami Ranganathan Nanda Maharaj and received her sannyasa in 2007. She was previously the principal of Nivedita Vidya Mandir School from 2014 to 2019. Her area of specialization is in yoga and Vedanta. In addition to studying the Ramakrishna Vivekananda literature, Mataji has extensively studied the Yoga Vedanta texts based on these twin philosophies, which include the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Raja Yoga, Upanishads, and the Prakarana Granthas. A gold medalist and topper with the unique combination of knowledge in the conventional sciences and traditional yogic and Vedantic texts. Mataji also regularly teaches in many prestigious universities and colleges all over the world, including IIT Delhi. And she was also an advisory member at the Department of Contemplative and Behavioral Sciences at Sri University, where she regularly takes courses on psychology, but from the paradigm of Vedanta and Yoga. Pranam Mataji, and we look forward to hearing from you. Welcome to the session, Mataji.
Namaste, everyone. I hope I'm clearly audible. Richa
Yes,
ji?
Mataji.
Yes,
Mataji.
Okay.
Yes, Mataji, you are audible.
Yeah, thank you. So, I'm happy to be part of this FTP and to see this very good response. And I was also part of the inaugural, and I really felt that the time has come when people are becoming very sensitive to these ideas. In our great spiritual heritage, we have a number of ideas which are paramount in, I would say, transforming human consciousness and making us better people, more responsible, more conscientious individuals. And I think that is the glory of our spiritual heritage, what it has to contribute in terms of character, in terms of raising human consciousness for a better world, of course. So I was very happy to see how the sessions have been arranged. Just today morning, you had a good dose of Vedanta, I'm sure. And now I will bring to you a few of the practices which we follow in the Sanatana Dharma in order to realize this Vedanta. You see, in our spiritual heritage, in the scriptures, you will see this clearly. God is understood as not merely the impersonal absolute, but also in a very personal sense with whom you can relate right from where you are, so that the practice of religion, the practice of spiritual discipline becomes possible for everyone. Usually what happens is we understand reality in terms of how we understand ourselves. This is a great psychological law. Our concept of reality depends to a great extent on our concept of ourselves. So when it comes to God, the Vedas, of course, speak of an impersonal, absolute reality of the nature of existence, consciousness, and bliss, Satchidananda. And they say, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. This is the nature of reality as it is. But then to what extent can we relate with the impersonal Brahman? So, to make things easier for us as we are, Sanatana Dharma also introduces to us the Sagun Sakar aspect of Brahman, which means that very impersonal absolute who is worshipped as Brahman in the Vedas, in the Upanishads. He comes to us in a Sakar form, with a form and with attributes, then he becomes Sagun. So the Sakar Sagun Brahman is something most people can relate with. They can do something about it. They can seek it. They can love it. So that is why that same God, concept of God comes to us in this form. And worship can be only to a person, you see. So that's why this personal concept of God is very much there in Hinduism, in Sanatana Dharma. And there are a whole lot of practices given to us, a whole lot of techniques, you can say, which help us move towards transform our consciousness. The essential purpose of all these practices is to transform our consciousness through devotion, through worship, through various forms, all this that we will be discussing, Arpan, Samarpan, Tarpan, and through all this to lead us to a level where we are able to grasp the sense of pure being, the reality of non-dual consciousness. Because you see, Brahman or non-dual consciousness is not another concept. It is far beyond concepts. It is reality as it is, truth as it is. Our very being is awareness. But this must come to us in the first person as an experience, not as an intellectual conviction or an intellectual, like a cloud of thought, which is blown away by other thoughts. So for this to happen, for this transformation of our normal awareness is required. And that is why these practices have been introduced. This is actually the beauty of the Sanatana Dharma. It shows you the highest. It also brings reality to our very doorstep, brings reality into a format which we can understand and relate with. And that is why the Sagun Sakar Upasana becomes very important in Hinduism. For the ordinary mind, for our practical ability to move forward in the spiritual realm, in our practices, spiritual practice, this aspect becomes very important. Because how we identify ourselves, that is going to frame our concept of God also. This may appear quite stunning to many of you, but the deepest yogic psychology will tell you this. Your concept of reality actually depends on your concept of yourself. So if my concept of myself is that I'm a person, I'm an individual, obviously my idea of God also that he's a greater person, a greater individual, and that is how we proceed. If I have touched the core truth of the self, that I myself am that pure consciousness, then I can directly relate with the absolute Nirguna aspect of Brahman. So once you understand these equations, it is possible to catch them in meditative awareness. When you're able to catch them, then you understand the importance of all these, this what is called Sakar Upasana, Sagun Upasana. So all of these practices are part of the Sanatana Dharma. It's like a huge umbrella encompassing a whole lot of practices, methods, and means to reach the ultimate goal of Brahman consciousness, God consciousness. So also we must understand this. It is not to be taken that the impersonal absolute is the highest and everything else is, well, it's been made for our movement. God actually exists in various forms. God actually exists. As long as you think your individuality actually exists, God as Sagun Sakar actually exists. So let us pay serious attention to all these means which they have given us to move forward. Now the first concept which I have to dwell upon is Arpan. But I will change the sequence. I will make it Arpan and then Tarpan we will study and then finally Samarpan. Because actually Samarpan is the last step in devotional practice. So Arpan is a very beautiful idea. Arpan actually means offering, giving with a sense of devotional fervor. It is an anga of worship. It is a part of worship. What is worship? You have very well known some form of puja. All of us being accustomed to doing all this, we know very well that a formalized way of approaching the Supreme through devotion is what is called a puja. So in a puja, we have the concept of Arpan, offering. We give offerings, isn't it, to the deity. Now puja can be conducted in a photo, in an image, in a actual what is called statue of the deity, in an image, in anything, even in a symbol, like you have the Shalagram Shila. You can conduct it anywhere, in anything, but it should be a holy symbol. I have seen people worshipping even stones, isn't it? You will see this in Indian villages even today. They are worshipping trees. So the divine can be worshipped in anything that is holy and which can become an object of worship. So when we have such a holy symbol, how do we express our love and devotion towards that? Whom are we worshipping through that symbol? Everybody knows it is God that we are worshipping, that Supreme Brahman. But as embodied in this symbol, so he himself, Brahman itself, comes into this symbol and accepts our worship. Whomever we worship, whether it is a symbol, whether it is an image, whether it's an icon, it's a form, or it is something which is just very abstract, still it is a form of symbol of the absolute. You can worship the divine there, and finally it will what will it result in? It will result in a transformation of our consciousness, and then we will be able to understand what pure awareness or Brahman means. So we worship any symbol as the divine. This is perfectly permitted in the Sanatana Dharma. In fact, there have been waves in our history when idol worship was condemned and all that, but that is when you don't understand the significance of the idol, the significance of an image. Once you understand it is a symbol of the Supreme, a symbol of the divine, well, you can perfectly worship even you can worship a person. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, you can worship your own mother as the symbol of the Divine Mother. So the point is this, the divine can be worshipped in various ways. And how do you express that spirit of worship? Through Arpan. You offer items of worship. The very best of what God has given us is offered to Him. So there are different ways of formalizing this. Puja is a formalization of our spirit of worship. And the simplest puja is what is called the Pancho Puja, where 5 items are offered. It's actually very simple. A small dhyan is done, a meditation on the deity you are worshipping, on the object of your worship, and then gradually you offer sandal paste, you offer flowers, you offer leaves, bay leaves if they are available, this bilva patra what is called. Then you offer dhoop, which is agarbatti. Then you offer deep, which is light. You light a lamp and perform a small aarti. And then you offer naivedya. Once it is consumed by the deity, it becomes prasad. So this is the sequence of the Panchopchar Puja. It is an offering, it is an arpan to the deity. Now, there is a way of doing this. See, puja, the essential sentiment of worship is the sentiment of purity and sanctity. And of course, supreme devotion. So if all these are combined, then obviously you will be offering, aap kiska arpan karenge? Only that which is best and the dearest to you, isn't it? So we offer the very best things to the deity. Because whatever you offer to God, 1,000-fold it will come back to you. That is the nature of, you see, even a very loving, great person, you do a little something for him and he will repay you in such a big way. What to speak of God? So whatever you offer comes back to you in 1,000-fold. So make sure your offering is of that kind. And make sure it is done with the spirit of worship, the spirit of love and devotion. Whatever I have, whatever is best with me, that I offer at your feet. So this simple sentiment goes a long way in building our life of devotion, of bhakti. And this bhakti marg, it's a highway, amongst all the spiritual paths. It actually refines your emotions. It refines the bhavs in your mind. it gives you emotional intelligence, it gives you devotion. So it is life transforming essentially. So it is a very important part of sadhana. Let me tell you this, it is not easy to straight jump into impersonal sadhana, Advait Vedant. You require all these as steps, the Sagun Sakar Upasana, the feeling of devotion. It is actually transforming your emotions. Please see this. Usually our emotions, our mind is constantly flitting across so many objects, all kinds of objects, all kinds of sentiments, emotions rising in our minds. So today, emotional intelligence, EQ is more important than IQ for success anywhere. So how do we change and refine our emotions? These were the means that were used in the past. When you develop devotion to God, you naturally transmute your emotional energy. You transform it into a kind of force, which is very positive. How can you have love in your heart and still have negativity in your mind? You can never have that. So a ready solution for all the negativity problems which we face today is to introduce some amount of puja, some amount of service to the divine in your everyday routine. If you can do this, your mind will remain positive because you know your emotions are well anchored, you know whom to worship and look up to, and you have a certain level of devotion, and that amounts to emotional maturity in your heart, and you're not just carried away by all the changing objects that we face in our everyday world, isn't it? So it naturally refines our, gives us emotional strength and emotional intelligence and refines our personality. So this is the purpose of offering Arpan. Now these pujas are, there are short pujas. The one I told you just now was the Pancho Puja, which you can perform at home, just investing 10 minutes every day for your own emotional health and transformation of consciousness is a very good idea, isn't it? So please try to do this, and you will understand the value of this only if you do it. Just performing a simple arti, it can give you so much of peace and inner, you naturally become contented, you become emotionally sensitive, you get an air of purity around you. It will help you in various ways in life. Today we use, many people use these words glibly, without actually doing it. And that's why they don't get much out of it. आजकल ये बहुत बोलते हैं कि कर्म ही पूजा है. अरे पूजा का कर्म पहले करके देखिए आप. Then when you get the feel of puja, you will understand how sanctified a thing it is and how it transforms you from within. So these are all very beautiful ways of changing the nature of our personality towards a better, a more positive personality. Puja can be the simple Panchopchar, it can be a Dashopchar puja, a longer puja with more items of Arpan worship, or it can be a Shodashopchar puja where we offer 16 items of worship. And along with that, there is a home, there is a fire ritual, and where also Arpan is done, oblations are made. And finally, there is the Aarti. Offerings are made in various ways, at various levels. If you go to the big temples, there are even more number of pujas going on. On any single day, there can be a number of offerings made throughout the day. What is the point in doing all this? And does God really accept our Arpan, our offerings? He does. People like Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother Sri Sarada Devi, they would actually see that the very essence of what you're offering is taken by the divine. And your bhav is what invokes the divine. And the divine draws it and converts it into sanctified food. So now it becomes prasad. And when you consume that prasad, there is that divine touch. So your very energies will change. It has a magnetic influence on you. So the whole purpose of this puja is what Sagun Sakar Upasana and getting the blessings of the divine. When you perform it for a long time, you will understand this is really a life transforming technique which was invented to take us forward in our spiritual path. So this is what I had wanted to tell you about Arpan. That is why some form, you see, actually life is about Arpan. Unless you have the spirit of giving, sharing, offering, you don't keep, the very nature of life is cyclic, it's give and take. You don't get in life when you don't give. Even this happens even with the natural elements, isn't it? The carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, Krebs cycle, all of these will tell you that life is basically an exchange of energy. And if you are not prepared to play your part, you break the cycle. So yajna is fundamentally this. It is willingly offering your energy, happily offering your energy, and renewing your own life process as a result. When we are a product of the efforts of others, the energies of others, it should be part of our life philosophy that we must offer and give as much as we can. This is the law of life. This is fundamentally yajna, the principle of yajna. When you are offering oblations to the fire, it's a symbolic representation of, in a way, you're saying that I offer myself towards the universe. I have received, now I will give. It's a symbolization of this give and take principle of life. So you renew your own energies, your own mind through these processes. And that is why Arpan is a very important concept. Now, it achieves its culmination in Samarpan, complete self-surrender. But before I go into that, I would like to cover the second point, which is Tarpan. This is also a very important idea. Today, also many people are practicing this. Right now, I'm on the banks of the Ganga in our headquarters at Dakshineshwar. And I see here in the ghats, people performing Tarpan to their ancestors. So we will study this concept also briefly, and then we will go over to Samarpan. And the last 15-20 minutes, I would like to keep for question answers based on this. So the concept of Tarpan, for that you require a background knowledge of the Pancha Maha Yagnas in Hinduism. This is a very important concept which is derived straight from the Vedas. If you have understood the concept of yajna, I think you already had a session on yajna, so I won't go more into that. But let me explain to you the concept of Pancha Maha Yagnas. What exactly they are and how Tarpan is a part of this. Now, yajna basically is exchange of the internal and the external. Actually, your body, how does our spiritual heritage look at the human personality? The body, the Annamaya Kosh, is only the external crust of your personality. After that, in a way beyond that is the Pranmaya Kosh, the vital energy sheath where your energies are performing, moving. And beyond that is the Manomaya Kosh, your mind, which is more you than anything else. Because you are constantly mentally sensitive, isn't it? By way of thought, emotion, all this. And then beyond that is the Vijnanamaya Kosh, the source of your will and sense of I. And beyond that is the Anandmaya Kosh, the causal sheath, the starting point of you as an individual being. But the Atman, which you truly are, which actually is the unchanging principle in you, that is beyond these 5 sheets. But these 5 sheets function in such a way, many times you can be doing good to the Annamaya Kosh. You think you're enjoying or giving license to the Annamaya Kosh, but you will be adversely affecting the Pranmaya Kosh. For example, if you consume too much food during, say, dinner time, you will feel uncomfortable. Your energies will become sluggish. So you adversely affected the Pranmaya Kosh. You made the mind also sluggish. You adversely affected the Manomaya Kosh. But the Annamaya Kosh can be okay. So this can happen in the human system. For this reason, the human being in Vedanta is seen as essentially the Atman, but expressing itself through these 5 koshas. And you are more intelligence and awareness than the body-mind complex, mere thought or just the body. So our entire culture was so focused on this idea that whatever was required or helped in the development of this Atma Jnana, Atma Vidya, whatever unfolded your awareness was given prime importance. And whatever just restricted that awareness or gave you only body consciousness was always considered, the lower aspect of life. Somehow the culture developed this sense because of our great spiritual heritage. See, if you think you're only the body, all you will think in terms of development will be materialistic development, because you are only sensitive to the senses, touch, taste, sound, vision. So only material development will be there. If you know yourself to be more a mental, a thinking being, you are more mind than really body, then obviously your goal will be intellectual development. We'll have a knowledge society, isn't it? And if you know yourself to be the soul, the Atman, functioning through this body-mind complex, then obviously and naturally you will be a man of values. How? All values begin with unselfishness. When you are only restricted to the body-mind complex, when you think you are only body and mind, you are bound to be selfish. When you have known yourself to be a unit of pure consciousness, apart from the body and mind, but functioning through it, then naturally a great value system comes into you. You know, primarily life is about giving. The more you give, the happier you will be. You don't have to rely on these synthetic joys, you know, the mere titillation of the senses to keep you entertained. You will understand that life has deeper and deeper aspects. So value is directly connected with spiritual growth. This is something you have to discover for yourself, that how even one bout of real meditation will help you understand there are different levels of happiness, and the highest levels is it's called, there are various beautiful names in Sanskrit, you know, that there is Sanyam Sukh, there is a joy of self-control, there is a joy of mental freedom, mental clarity, there is a joy of deep level engagement in something, there is a joy in purity, there is a joy in higher awareness. In fact, high level awareness and the highest happiness are synonyms. The same experience, you can call it in 2 different ways. So if I'm not deeply aware, I cannot be deeply happy. These are all discoveries which you can make for yourself, by yourself. It's a to-do thing. It's not a philosophy which I'm talking here. You can find this out for yourself. In fact, you can watch the lecture, The Ladder of Happiness, which I gave in IIT Delhi. There I have tried to show this in a very scientific format, that there are levels of happiness available to the human experience. And they are, in a way, you know, they are sort of tangled up with your awareness. The lower your awareness, the lesser happiness you will have in your life, no matter how many things you collect around you. But this very awareness has deeper and deeper aspects. And when you touch pure awareness, you actually don't require anything to keep you happy. You can use a whole lot of things for your work, for your purposes, whatever. But for you yourself, you have felt the experience that pure awareness is the highest joy, bliss possible. So this is something we have to discover for ourselves. And the problems occur when we try to restrict happiness only to the external body level and assume that collecting more objects to keep the body happy will keep us permanently happy. We have to review and find out whether this concept is true or not. or what makes us think that this concept is true, and which converts us into a completely materialistic outlook. So this is something I will leave it to you to find out for yourself. And let me now go into the Pancha Maha Yagnas. These were techniques which were mandatory and invented to help you perform yagna on a daily basis. It's a kind of give and take. It's a kind of being grateful for what you are taking, receiving from life, and paying back in some way. So the concept of yagna is basically this: recognizing this fundamental law of life, that life is an exchange of energies, and you have to replenish those energies. You have to give back what you take from life. Now, I usually tell this to my students: see, for you have reached, say, 20 years or 22 years. So long, just imagine the efforts of so many people have made you what you are today, isn't it? Right from the food that appears on your plate at the time of lunch, how many people have worked that one plate of food should come before you? Just think of this and see how many people, at least 15 people have worked. So the food that you're consuming is the labor of so many people. And what have you paid back? In what way? So yagna is basically understanding this principle, that my body and mind have grown through the labors of others, through the living beings around me, through the labors of people who have lived earlier to me. And my mind, my very thoughts have been created. They have been affected by those who have thought earlier, isn't it? We live in a common pool of, we think we live in a common pool of thoughts, but a whole lot of our thinking has been affected by people who have given us those thoughts, whom we have observed, whom we have spoken to, and that has become part of our memory, and that has triggered various thought avenues. So our very body and mind is the result of the works of others. Let us acknowledge this. We may be very creative, yes, but we have reached that point of creativity as a result of so much of build-up through the efforts of others. And in order to understand this, these principles of Pancha Maha Yagna were given to us. Even today, many people observe this on an everyday basis. It is mandatory for you to pay back to whom? The first is Bhuta Yagna, to all living beings on this planet. How do you pay back? At least there are two ways of performing these yagnas. There's an internal aspect to it and an external aspect to it. So Bhuta Yagna you perform by being internally grateful to all beings who have lived on this earth, who have sustained life on this earth, who have made me what I am today. They may have passed on, but I should remain grateful. This principle of gratefulness, this one principle will ensure positivity in your life. Please check this out and see if this is true or not. Whenever we are in negative states, when we are angry or we're denouncing others, we don't like situations, you will see gratefulness is absent. So this one principle, if we can bring into our lives, through understanding this yagna bhava, you will always remain very positive in your outlook. So Bhuta Yagna means being deeply grateful to all of life around us. And its external aspect is serving all beings in whatever measure we can. Being kind, talking sweetly to everyone, being compassionate. The spirit of service is not an option. It is compulsory. If you want to make your life positive, if you want to be in harmony with universal life, this must be there. So this is essentially Bhuta Yagna, the spirit of service. Give in whatever measure you can. If you're a doctor, at least treat 5 patients for free every month. If you are a teacher, please teach at least 15 to 20 students for free. If at least the helpers in your home, you can do something for them and their families. This is how we gradually perform these yagnas. In the modern life today, find out ways in which in your own profession you can help out those who are less fortunate than you. That is Bhuta Yagna. Because of the natural gratefulness that you feel for life, for universal life, you are a small part of that. You may be a big man, but that's only in your head. We are essentially in terms of life energies, vitality. You know, your own Pranmaya coach will tell you that you are only a bit of this planet. You are a part of universal life. And the part has to contribute to the whole. So service is an essential, fundamental law of life. And it is not an option or, well, if I feel like it, I will do it. Or, well, I spent so much on my education, so now I should get back. Put all these ideas a little aside and focus on the essential nature of life. It is always giving. Look at the sun. Look at life, just bare life as it is around you. Today, if you are living in high rises, then it's difficult to see this. But if you actually live in nature, you can clearly see this, that the sun, or I spend a lot of time in the Himalayas, you know, every year. At least I try to spend as much time as I can. And there, this is so obvious. Every plant, tree, the forest, the very air there is telling you, give as much as you can. That is joy. Nature teaches us this lesson. But somewhere our individuality and the ego becomes more important than life as it is. And that is when we become narrow in our outlook. We lose the spirit of yagna. So this is Bhuta Yagna. Rishi Yagna, the second type of yagna, actually means acknowledging the contribution of the great minds which have contributed in ways you do not know to the development of your own mind. Rishi Yagna means paying back to our rishis, being grateful, acknowledging their contribution. And how do you actually externally repay this debt to the rishis? By learning the knowledge they gave us and by teaching it, giving it to others. This is the way the Rishi Yagna is performed. In fact, a large part of your genetic memory is Pitri Yagna and Rishi Yagna. I don't know if you understand this. We all have various kinds of memories. And one kind is the genetic memory, which every cell in your body has it. And it knows it is life complete in itself. Don't think the mind is right here. The mind is all over. And this is just the hardware, you can see. The software is programmed in every cell of your body. And the genetic memory which you have is entirely created by the people who have, the great people who are all part of history, the great rishis, the great thinkers of our times, and the pitris, your own ancestors. So that's the next yagna, you know, the Pitri Yagna. The external aspect of Pitri Yagna is what is called this ritual, Tarpan, which we will be studying now. And the internal part of the Pitri Yagna is you are so grateful to your ancestors because your body and mind is directly derived from them. To what an extent, any cell in your body will tell you that. Your entire genetic memory and evolutionary memory, it depends on them. It heavily relies on them. So be grateful. That is why ancestor worship was such a huge part of so many religions of the world. Because it is the fact of human life that you owe a great debt to all of your ancestors. So be grateful. Every day pray for them, acknowledge their contribution. And externally, how do you express this, your gratefulness? Through the Tarpan ritual, which is what we will dwell upon for a few minutes. Tarpan actually means offering water to our departed ancestors. So that is the symbolic way of expressing our gratefulness for their contributions in our lives. So even now, if you go to these river banks, you will see people offering. See, two types of offerings are made. One is the Jala Arghya, which they offer to the deities. The second is the Tarpan. Either they will do it through a kamandalu or they may even do it in their palms, which is offered to the ancestors. Tarpan itself means an offering to the ancestors. You offer anything. Don't think it's a material object that you're offering. Your pranmay kosh will understand that any material object has a magnetism of its own. It has energies of its own. You are offering those energies. And the sentiment, the bhav in your mind, the spirit of gratefulness, thankfulness, the love that you have for them, you are offering that through the Tarpan ritual. Externally, it is water that you're offering. So all the waters of our rivers were always considered sacred, isn't it? Every river in India was considered a goddess. You are offering that water to your departed ancestors by the Tarpan ritual. In modern life, suppose you don't have a river close to you, how do you offer the Tarpan ritual? Mentally make sure you are grateful to them for the life that has been given to you. And you can offer a small amount of water or anything as a ritual offering at the time of your puja to your ancestors. So this is how the Tarpan ritual assumes significance. In today also, you will find a whole lot of people are practicing this. There are two other yagnas which I would just mention. One is the Deva Yagna, which is the offerings, the worship you show to the gods. So externally, this is done through puja. Offerings are made, Arpan is made, and internally through love and devotion for the divine. Once we understand divine attributes, divine qualities, all the gods will become very dear to you. The gods of any religion, in fact, they symbolize and signify some of the highest attributes of human life, isn't it? They are glorious, they are all loving, all pervasive, and their expressions there, the power they hold and the compassion they have, all these touch human hearts. And that is why Deva Yagna, your sense of worship for God. This is not the ultimate God, but the gods of Hinduism. See, we have different levels of divinities also, isn't it? Every religion has it. So here in Hinduism, it is by the Deva Yagna, it is meant the gods like Indra, Varuna. Offerings are made to them because they are in charge of every element, and also the higher gods. We also make, we perform pujas of deities like Vishnu, Lord Shiva, Saraswati, Devi. So many deities are there. So all of these are considered as all their offerings are made to all. So when we typically make it to Sagun Sakar aspect of Brahman, the deities, the higher deities you can say, like Vishnu, Maheshwar, Devi, then we don't call it a yagna, we actually call it puja. It is a worship form. But when we do it to the lesser gods, then we call it Deva Yagna. So this is also part of the Pancha Mahayagnas. Then finally is the Nra Yagna. Nra Yagna is again the spirit of Yagna which you have for men around you, men and women, to the human species. Because you see, you are a product of the labors of others. So obviously the gratefulness you should feel for others, the positivity you should radiate towards others, that constitutes this Nra Yagna. And externally, it takes the form of service to others. Internally, it takes the form of prayer for the well-being of everybody. So you see, even just doing this, praying for the well-being of everybody every day, will expand your mind and transform your consciousness. So I told you, these are all techniques invented to finally lead you to the higher levels of spiritual development. Puja, worship, these Pancha Mahayagnas, the spirit of Yagna in everyday life, all of these are part and parcel of spiritual transformation. Please understand this. The ultimate knowledge of Vedant comes when one is a Yagna Siddha, when one has been able to arrive at a mindset which is only positive and dedicated to the highest, always, all the time. So all of these are important in that sense. They are all stepping stones to the highest. And finally, we come to the concept of what is called Samarpan. This is actually the last step, I would say, of spiritual practice. Complete self-surrender, giving oneself over completely to the divine. And this has been considered in the Bhakti Marg as the ultimate value of human life. It is the ultimate dharma of the human being to surrender himself wholeheartedly and completely to the divine. A life lived in complete self-surrender is a life lived with ultimate devotion. And it has tremendous rewards. In fact, it will bring God into your life. So what exactly is this Samarpan? Samyak Rupena Arpan. Complete giving. Of what? Not just articles of worship, but of oneself. Complete self-surrender, the last step of spiritual life. It means you have brought your energies, your thought process, your emotion, your awareness to a point where only God matters to you. So it is really the highest step of spiritual practice where you are entirely ready to offer your whole being to God. This is called Samarpan. And when does this exactly happen? See, if you read traditional Bhakti Shastras, the Bhakti scriptures, you will see they will tell you, like for example, the Bhakti Vilas of Sanatana Goswami. It will describe, it very beautifully describes this concept of Samarpan, self-surrender, and it also tells you what are the expressions, the different manifestations of the spirit of self-surrender. So I would like to dwell a little on that. The very culmination of bhakti lies in self-surrender. And what is the nature of this bhakti? It is beautifully described as Anya Bhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadinam Anavritam Anukulena Krishnanushilanam Bhakti Ruttama, which means when a man has lost all other desire except the desire for devotion to God, and he has left everything else out of his life. That doesn't mean you run away from everything else, but you have prioritized the divine above everything else. When you reach this state of mind, then self-surrender, samarpan becomes easy. It becomes natural. Bhakti reaches its consummation. So what are the steps towards this? What is the nature of this self-surrender, samarpana? I would like to outline that. You see, he has given 6 points actually in his Bhakti Vilas. Hari Bhakti Vilas, the text is called. So let us just go through this for us to understand samarpan in a deeper way. The first is Anukulasya Sankalpaha. The nature of a person pursuing bhakti is that he will, for the sake of bhakti, he will make everything anukul. He will stick to that which produces bhakti for the Lord. Now, what is the meaning of this? Which means, when you prioritize God in your life, you will do all those things which will bring devotion into your life, isn't it? Like, for example, devoting the early morning of at least 1 hour or say 45 minutes to some good reading, meditation, prayer, not straight away getting up in the morning and going into Twitter or Facebook or breaking news. That will all come later, okay. But start the day in a sattvic way. That helps you develop bhakti. So Anukulasya Sankalpa means this. He is committed to divinizing his life and doing all that is Anukul, easy to bring bhakti into life. His lifestyle becomes like that. So following a sattvic diet, deliberately keeping your thoughts focused and turn towards higher things, keeping good company, all of this is Anukulasya Sankalpa. And even the time you retire at night, it is so very important to focus on wholly elevating things at that time. Instead of, I'm just giving you practical tips, instead of straight away seeing something that agitates the mind and then going to sleep, it is better to have calming thoughts, relaxing music, prayer, or some good reading before you retire at night. And throughout the day, keeping a spirit of devotion and service, quietude, not just restless, reckless activity. This is always encouraged. So a devotee will naturally follow these principles. This is Anukulasya Sankalpa. Gradually, all these 6 points will lead us to self-surrender. The second is Pratikuras Varjanam, which means whatever harms your spirit of devotion and spiritual practice, keeping that at a distance. You will obviously do this, isn't it? If you really want a life of devotion and higher realization, you will keep anything that is pratikul, which is antagonistic to this. Keep it distant. Like, for example, anything that disturbs your mind, makes it restless, violent, angry. Today, I am sorry to tell you, a lot of content on media, so even social media, it is so disturbing, and I would say it is so insensitive. So keeping a little distance from all this, because ultimately, let us understand what creates your thoughts. It is important for you to understand this. What creates the content of your mind? It is the intake of your senses. What you see, what you hear, you'll start thinking along those lines. So if the very content that comes to your senses is harmful, or I would say insensitive, even culturally insensitive, then it's like you're using your mind like a waste paper basket, and putting anything in there. So don't use your mind like that. Make sure your senses are focused on the right things. You take in the right impressions. It creates an impact on your mind. So throughout the day, your mind will remain fresh and joyous, happy. So this is Pratikulasya Varjanam. Deliberately removing ourselves from that which is harmful, sickening, negative in nature. Deliberately removing ourselves from that. Well, you may ask me, many youngsters ask me this question, but Mataji, isn't it important to change the way the world is functioning? That you will do a little later when you get the power to make changes. When we ourselves are established in the inner spiritual life, we gradually develop the power to influence other lives. So, but first we must protect ourselves and make sure we develop the inner world, isn't it? That is why all these methods. The third is Rakshishyati iti Vishwaso, which means deep dependence on God. God will protect me. The supreme principle of life is there to protect me. This one sentiment in the mind will give you so much of calmness, that there is a supreme being who will make sure that the things, because I'm devoted to that, I will be taken care of. The things in my life will be in order. Just think in these positive ways and see, it will have a magical effect on your mind and body. The whole problem with today's negative thinking is gradually people are because they have lost this faith, they don't know whom to rely upon. And constantly the media is giving you the news, nobody is to be relied upon. So then what will be the nature of this kind of a mind? It will constantly have negative dips. That is why your BP shoots up, your heart has trouble, so many kinds of problems in the body. Even today's ADHD and OCD, all of this is directly related to the functioning of your mind. So these kinds of constant reaffirming your faith in the divine and these kinds of attitudes help us keep positive states of mind throughout the day. The fourth point they give us is Gotritve Varanam Tatha, which means, again, there is a divine being who will take care of my needs. Usually our survival needs are taken care of because you are investing energy along particular lines. Now, what is the source of that energy? It's the divine. So have this faith that my needs will be taken care of. The source of my being is right within me. And that is, I'm devoted to that source and it will take care. Whichever God you worship, whichever deity you worship, or even if you don't worship any God, have this faith in the supreme principle of life, the supreme principle of consciousness, which is right in your heart. That is your very source. And that this faith will keep your mind ever positive. Then the fifth point is Atma Nikshepa, which means, it is the sentiment that I have free will, no doubt, but the fruit of my action is dispensed by God. Please take note of this. You have free will to a certain extent, but who's the giver of that karma phala? Whatever you do, there is a dispenser of your karma phala, and that is God. So there is a divine power which protects us like a parent which is ever there for us. And if we have this faith, it is far easier to move forward in spiritual life. Then Karpanyam, which means actually egolessness and a kind of dainya bhav, a kind of, what is called meekness in Christian theology. This Karpanyam helps you to keep, again, a low profile. You won't be over egoistic and destroy your own energies. And it will help you keep good relationships with others, good interpersonal relationships. Because a very egoistic person obviously cannot relate very positively with others. So Karpanyam is a way of living maturely, focused towards higher ideals in life. All of these 6 points help us towards self-surrender, samarpanam. This is the understanding. Self-surrender towards the Supreme is not just an expression. It is a deep-rooted attitude of mind which comes when you are egoless, when you understand that the dispenser of the fruit of your action is the divine, when you understand God is there to take care of our needs, when you make sure you keep away from the harmful, you remain dedicated to the really elevating things in life. When you take care of all these things, you develop a great life of devotion and self-surrender to the divine. So there is a beautiful story which illustrates this. I would like to conclude with that story because that will help us understand this bhav of samarpan in a more deep way. And stories, they remain in our mind. You have been listening to a lot of Vedanta and very deep subjects for a long time. No, I think it started just a couple of days back, but it will go on for a long time. So let me just put in this story here, which you can remember. And this story will help us understand the nature of dependence or self-surrender to God, the nature of samarpan. Now, they say this story actually happened in the life of Arjunacharya, who was a well-known saint. And initially he was a scholar, then later he became a saint. There is also another view that this story happened in the life of, somebody has raised a hand. Yes, you can ask your question, please. This story is also attributed to Sridhar Swami.
No, ma'am, you complete the story, I'll ask the question.
Pardon?
No, you complete the story, I'll ask the question.
Okay, then you will ask the question. Okay, fine. So this story is also attributed to Sridhar Swami, who was a great commentator on the Bhagavad Gita, but it is also attributed to Arjunacharya. Now we will leave this to history. We don't know in whose life exactly it happened, but it happened in a saint's life. That much we know. And the story goes like this. See, this saint was earlier a great scholar, and he would pour over the Bhagavad Gita for hours and hours on end. And even as a young man, he was well versed in Sanskrit. He was a Pandit, a knower of so many scriptures, and Bhagavad Gita was his speciality. He just loved the Bhagavad Gita. And he would pour over the Gita every day for long hours. And he was a poor Brahmin. So he would only bring home what he got in alms every day. And the rest of the time devoted to worship, seva, and reading the scriptures and expounding the scriptures. So while he was still a very young man, one day he was sitting and reading the Bhagavad Gita, and he came across this verse. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana pariyupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. So I think you know yogakshemam vahamyaham thanks to LIC, but it comes from this verse of the Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana pariyupasate, which means those who worship me, those who are devoted to me without with an unflickering mind, without any distractions. Such, those who are nitya yukta, which means joined in me, with me in their hearts, who are deeply connected to me in their devotion. To such, what do? Yogakshemam vahamyaham. I carry to them whatever they need in this life and in the thereafter. In the here and the hereafter. I carry to them whatever they require. So you see, this is a huge assurance, a promise by the Lord that he carries to the devotee whatever he requires. But what kind of devotee? One who is totally devoted to the divine, one who lives in the divine practically. Nitya Yukta means one who actually lives the divine life. So when he came across this verse in the Bhagavad Gita, this Pandit, this Acharya thought that why it's written Vahamyaham, Yogakshemam Vahamyaham. Why should the Lord carry? I'm sure there's some mistake in the compilation of these verses. It must be Dadamyaham. The Lord grants to such a devotee whatever he requires in the here and the hereafter. Why should he carry? It's a mistake. So thinking it is a mistake, he took his feather pen, dipped it in the ink, and struck out Vahamyaham and wrote on top Dadamyaham. Now his wife was there. She was a young girl. And she saw this and said, "What are you doing, my lord?" And he said, No, there's a mistake here. Yogakshemam Vahamyaham, the Lord, Dadamyaham, the Lord must have said, but it is written Vahamyaham, so I am removing it. And it seems she told him that, please don't do that. These are the words of the Lord, of Lord Krishna. It is Bhagavad Gita. It is not Bhagavad Gita. It is not word about the Lord. It is the word of the Lord. You can't make changes like this here. But he told her, no, you don't advise me. Women don't understand these complicated matters. All this he said. And then he made that change, and then he kept that feather pen aside and went to the river for a bath. So when he went to the river, this lady was quite sad. She was very devoted at heart, very devoted to that same Lord Krishna. She was really having samarpan towards the Lord. So it seems that she was feeling very sad that her husband did this. He struck out the words of the Lord, and she sat in a corner lamenting. At that time, she suddenly heard the sound of a flute. And then she came to the door, and so melodious, the sound of the flute, and she saw a very beautiful boy coming from one side of the street. You know, small houses. At that time, there were only huts in Indian villages. And this boy was coming with a basket on his head. But what a divine picture this boy was. He was luminous and lotus eyes and such a beautiful face and radiating joy and bliss like that. She could not take her eyes off him. And she felt that who's this child? Small, young boy, 9-10 years maybe. And he's coming playing the flute with a basket on his head. And then he came to her doorstep and said, "Mother, I have bought this for you." And he kept the basket down. And she asked, "Who are you, my son?" And she said, "Oh," he said, "you know, your husband went for a bath. He sent all this through me." And she said, "Oh, really? I hope you didn't come to a wrong home, because from where will my husband get all this?" The basket was full of goodies, all sorts of sweets and fruits and groceries which she would require, because they were a poor couple, and every day he had to beg for alms to bring things. How will he send all this? She thought. So she said, "Have you not come to the wrong home, my child?" Then he said, "No, mother, it's for you only." And then when he bent down to keep that basket, she saw 2 streaks of blood on his back. Blood oozing from his back, like these 2 streaks. She shuddered, and she's such a beautiful child. "Who beat you like this?" she asked him. And that boy, with a twinkle in his eye, he said, "Your husband. Your husband beat me. That is why I got this." And again she shuddered. She said, "How could he do this? Huh? My child, how did he raise his hand on you? It looks like somebody has thrashed you. How did my husband thrash you?" And then the boy said, "What to do, mother? And anyway, he has asked me to deliver this, so I kept this at your feet. Now I'm going, mother. It will heal you, don't worry." And then she said, "No, no, wait, my child. Let me give you something to eat. Let me give you water." But he said, "No, mother, I'll come back again." And again, playing his flute, this very beautiful child, which was so mohak, so attractive, he just left. And she again was standing there only, sort of, she was completely like paralyzed, thinking, just seeing him, she went into a deep meditative state. And then she felt, who's this child and why did my husband beat him? What is this happening? So after some 10-15 minutes, she saw her husband coming. She was in the same place. Then when he came, tears were rolling down her cheeks. And he said, "What happened?" And she told him, "What happened? You should tell me. From where did you get all this stuff? And most of all, why did you beat that kid? Such a divine child. Just looking at him, my heart melted away." And he asked, "Which kid? And what? I did not send you anything of this. It must have come to the wrong home." Then she said, "But no," that child said, "You sent it. And why did you raise your hand on that child? Such a divine child." And he said, "I did not raise my hand on anybody. And I did not send you this stuff. I took my bath in the Ganga and now I have come here. And now I will go out for alms." And she said, "There is no need for alms. Just look at the content of this basket." In that huge basket were all sorts of things which they would require for years on end, because there were also jewels, there was some amount of gold, everything hidden under the groceries, vegetables. And then the tears filled the eyes of Arjunacharya also. And he said, "You are so lucky, my wife. The Lord himself has come to us. Only he can bring this. But what are the streaks of blood that you are speaking of?" I did not raise my hands. Then it dawned on him. He had struck out the words of the Lord. That is equivalent to hitting the Lord. How can you strike out the words of the scriptures? And this is Bhagavad Gita. It is the word of the Lord. How can he strike out that? But he had done that in the morning. He had struck out Vahamyaham with red ink and written Dadamyaham. How could he do this? And then he was wrapped in tears. And then he went straight to his worship room and fell at the feet of the Lord and said, "That is why you didn't give me darshan. I have harmed you. Forgive me, my Lord, forgive me. You really bring to the devotee what he needs, and carrying it on your head. My wife is so devoted. I am so devoted to you. That is why you brought this, what we require. Carrying it on your head, you showed me that what you have spoken of in the Bhagavad Gita, you are like that. I surrender myself completely to you." And that is how he became a great saint. He even gave up his scholarship and became completely devoted to the Lord. He and his wife both immersed in the Lord. So you see, Samarpanam means this, and the Lord's nature is like this. He will verily do for the devotee everything. He actually carries it on his head and brings it to the devotee. If your devotion reaches that pitch, you don't require anything else in life. This is Samarpan. Naturally, you will self-surrender totally at the feet of the Lord. So this is the great idea of self-surrender, Samarpanam in Sanatana Dharma. This is the point where the soul becomes divine. It gets divinized so completely, it merges in the Lord. Here afterwards, the life is only with the Lord. These are the great saints of Hinduism. In their minds, nothing else was there. The Alvars, Namalvars, then in the north, so many saints. This is the transforming power of bhakti. It makes the mind like that. It brings you to the point of complete self-surrender, samarpanam. And that is how a saint is made. So you see, these are all very great concepts which only the practice of devotion will help you digest and understand these concepts. Don't take them as the way we study theology, intellectual understanding. That hardly matters. These are things to be felt and practiced and known through practice. Entire Vedanta is like that. Please understand this. It is not intellectual gymnastics or logical analysis. That is the last step. The actual thing is through practice of yoga, whether you practice Raj Yoga or Bhakti Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Karma Yoga, through the practice of yoga, how much of this you understand? Pure awareness is a first person experience. How much of that you understand, that is alone going to matter. The rest is a means. That is why you see, when we study Vedanta, we call it Jnana Yoga. It is a means to that experience. Don't make it the end. Any study of Vedanta is only the starting point. After that, you have to practice it. You have to do something about it in the way you are programmed from within. Either practice bhakti or practice karma yoga. You can harmonize all the paths. You can bring all the yogas together and also practice. In fact, Vivekananda recommended that. Practice all the yogas together and reach that state where you will know the truth of Vedanta. It is always available. We have turned away from it. We are vimukh to it, because we are consumed by Maya. We have become identified with this body-mind complex. Although we are only functioning through it, we have become it. We are identified with our name. We are identified with our qualifications. We are identified with 100 things which is not us. And that is why we require practice is required to dehypnotize us, to remove us from this hypnotism that we are body-mind. And through sadhana, what you will understand will be real Vedanta. That is why adopt one of these yogas. That is why I always speak of Yoga Vedanta together. The practice, the means and the end, Vedanta go together. It is through the practice that you know the end. Otherwise, it will just be an intellectual cloud in your head. It will get blown away by another cloud after some time. So take practice seriously. This is what I would say. I would like to end the session here. Let's take up question answers. Already one hand is raised. I think 3 hands are raised. Yes.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much for giving us this knowledge and sharing the importance of practice when it comes to embodying that knowledge and also establishing ourselves in it. So now I would request Kayalviri ji to go ahead with her question.
Ma'am, it was a wonderful session and really it was blissful. And I have 2 questions, ma'am. One thing is that we are limited in nature. We are trying to find that unlimited. How do we come out from the Maya Shakti and know our unlimitedness? And the second question is, you had told about the Arpana, what we can do. Can ladies do the Arpana all the 30 days? These are 2 questions. There is the puja, can we do it for all the 30 days? So that is in a month.
Mhm.
Okay, that is the question I would like to ask.
Yeah. So let me answer the second question first. The thing is, see, Holy Mother herself used to say this, that as long as you have body consciousness, it is better to avoid those times when you yourself feel you're not pure enough to do it. As long as there is body consciousness, this applies. But when you are beyond that, how will it apply? So take all this into account. And regarding the first question which you asked, how do we get out of this Maya? How do we get out of this Maya? See, the purpose of yoga, the very nature of yoga is to make you a yukta, to make you completely connected with your divine nature. But suppose your interest in the highest is so great that you can dispense with any path. You straight away want to dive into it. Then such people are very, very rare. Like I can give you one example, Vivekananda, another example on Raman Maharshi. Straight diving directly into the ultimate. So for these rare kinds of people, yes, they will overcome Maya just like that because they have a huge past history of, they were not ordinary people, isn't it? As soon as Ramakrishna saw Vivekananda, he said he's a Dhyana Siddha. He's one of the Saptarishis. And Raman Maharshi also is definitely not of the ordinary Jiva category. So the problem is when we try to imitate them, you will understand at some point it is impossible to imitate. You won't get the experience no matter what you do. So it is better to take up a technique. It is better to adopt a yoga and adopt all of these yogas to overcome Maya. See, Jnana Yoga satisfies our intellect. And most of us are like that, okay, with our educational training and all that, we have become very intellectualized. So then apply Jnana. Along with that, whatever work you do, try to convert it into Karma Yoga. Then you have a huge emotional part. Everybody has it. Even if you deny it, it is there. So you invest it in family, in friends, in all this. So a little of that energy you should give to the divine. That is Bhakti Yoga. Gradually develop it. As you become older, God should be the pivot around which your life should rotate. That is Bhakti Yoga. And then, of course, Raja Yoga, meditative practice, so very important for you to understand abstract realities. Like now, if I say pure awareness, what will you understand by that? That's why meditative practice will help you grasp all this in the first person. Gradually, combining these yogas will take your life towards the highest, towards Brahma Jnana, Brahma Vidya, what we say. But if you just intellectualize about it, don't actually do anything about it, it is very difficult, I'm telling you. You will come to dead ends. Unless one is a really developed Rishi. Their case is so very different, yet they showed us the importance of sadhana. Look at the life of Sri Ramakrishna himself. What enormous sadhana over years. We can't imagine the way he performed sadhana. So can't we perform a little? He used to say, do a little. I have done everything for you. Do a little. So all their lives show that it is so very important to adopt a means towards that end. Then only you can overcome Maya. Most people don't even know they are in Maya. At least we have some sense that we are in Maya. This is not the real thing. And we are wanting to go there. Okay. Any other question? What's the time?
Mataji. It is 12:20. We have 10 minutes.
10
Could we
minutes.
take a couple more questions, Mataji?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I would request Ashutosh ji to go ahead next.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Hello, Pranam Mataji. Thank you so much for the wonderful discourse on Sagun Upasana, highlighting Sagun Upasana, and underlying the importance of Yoga, Advait, Sadhana, and particularly for the wonderful story which brought tears in eyes. What I heard earlier was about Lord Krishna turned his face blackish. I mean, his mouth was turned black as he appeared before the lady. And really, it was a great thing. What I had to ask is about the kinds of happiness you just told, in which one of its type was about when we get clarity, mental clarity. So could you please elaborate, I mean, or enumerate those types of happiness, please?
Yes. See, it's a beautiful question. Let us dwell for some time on understanding happiness. Now, each person understands happiness very differently, but when we grow in life, when we are able to understand the value of spirituality, you will understand your concept of happiness also will change. Now, the point is there are different levels of happiness available to us. One is the sense level of happiness. Definitely you eat good food, you hear good music, you feel nice, you feel happy. So this is one level of happiness. Beyond that is the happiness of what we can call mental happiness. You listen to a beautiful poem, good thoughts, some elevating ideas, deep level engagement into something. You feel happy, naturally refreshed, isn't it? Even a game of chess, if you're deeply absorbed, it will give you happiness. So you have mental happiness also. Next level of happiness. Just our physical needs, the satisfaction of physical needs is not going to give you the highest happiness. There is the second rung. You have to actually climb this ladder, mental happiness. After that, you have happiness in deep level absorption. You are doing some wonderful deep level mathematics. You don't know how the hours passed by. When you generate flow, I'm sure you know the concept of flow, deep level absorption into something which makes you completely insensitive to time, space, and absolutely no sense of yourself even. And which is natural, not that you're doing it with effort. This level of absorption will, after that bout of absorption, it will leave you with great gladness and happiness. So this is the next level of absorptive happiness. You can call it intellectual happiness, whatever, the next rung of the ladder. After this, you have the happiness of meditation. That is a far more thrilling experience. For those of you who meditate, you will understand just emptying mind is bringing clarity. Just decluttering mind is like a boj chala gaya. You have removed a burden from your head. You feel so free and joyous. So there is the happiness of meditation. Finally, there is the happiness of, before meditation, you also have the happiness of service. If you bring happiness in the lives of others, you feel very happy. And then there's the happiness of meditation. After that, you have the level of samadhi. Great absorption in the highest spiritual ideal. Or you can say the happiness of God consciousness. So you see, there are different levels of happiness. Misery comes into our life when we try to maximize happiness at the minimal level, at the lower level. If I feel now that by collecting a whole lot of material objects, I will maximize my physical happiness. Would you call that happiness? You see, in a short time, it will tell you that it will put you on the hedonic treadmill. It will tell you that it is meaningless. You party 3 days continuously and your own mind will get sick. So trying to maximize happiness at the lower levels is not going to increase your levels of happiness. What you have to do is you have to climb this ladder of happiness. You have to optimize happiness by climbing this ladder, because these are higher and higher rungs of happiness, which you have to discover for yourself. This is not a theory. when you climb this ladder of happiness, you will know that along every level also there are different ranges of happiness. And I cannot substitute intellectual or spiritual happiness with physically accumulated goods or mere pleasure. Pleasure will then appear to you like a concocted thing, you know. It's a synthetic form of joy. But the original joy is directly related to happiness, I mean awareness. And the higher your awareness, the deeper you become aware within yourself, you will see the lesser even objects you require to remain happy. You are contented and happy by yourself, and that degree of happiness is very high. So the ultimate equation in the science of happiness is an exponential function of your awareness. The deeper that awareness, deep means expanded and pure, the more you will be happy without anything. Let me repeat the equation before I end. Happiness is an exponential function of your awareness. Find out and see if this is true or not. Yes.
Mataji, there is a related question.
Yes.
I have heard you of speaking of yoga. There are
Speaking
two
of what?
Yoga.
Speaking
sutra.
of?
Speaking on Yoga Sutra, I heard you.
Hello, I can't hear you clearly. Please repeat.
Yoga Sutra. Yoga Sutra. Hello.
Yes.
Yoga Sutra.
Yes.
There are stages named Kshipta, Vikshipta, Mood, Ekagra, and Niruddha.
Yes.
I always wondered why the order is the order of the place of mood is after Vikshipta. That always wondered me.
No, I have changed that order. Have you seen in Science of Focus and all that? I have changed that order. Mood is the most tamasic state where you are absolutely distracted, and that's why dull, sluggish. So the mind is so restless, you can't even say it is distracted. It is so sluggish, it has gone to sleep. So mood is first, then comes Kshipta, then Vikshipta, then Ekagra, and then Niruddha. So let me also point this out to you that just the first level of happiness, just mere physical pleasure, it will put you in mood state. This ladder of happiness also, there's a correspondence between these states of mind. And the higher you climb the ladder, the more you will become conscious and aware. Okay. Any other question?
Could we take one more question, Mataji?
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Swati ji, please go ahead.
Pranam Mataji.
Namaste.
Speechless. जो सुना जो समझा, मैं एक एग्जांपल के तहत मैं एक क्वेश्चन अपना बता पाऊंगी कि व्हेन वी हैव आवर मील, जब हम खाना खाते हैं, इट्स अ बैलेंस्ड डाइट. मेरे पास सारी चीजें हैं, प्रोटीन, carbohydrate, fat, everything, but I'm not in a state of mind. My mind is not in the state of happiness, the peace. I'm angry, I'm in worry, परेशानी में हूँ, मैं हरी में हूँ, मुझे जाना है या मुझे किसी से आर्गुमेंट हुआ है, and I am having my meal, though it's a balanced, and that makes my blood that goes to brain also.
Right.
So what is the impact of that state of mind, though we have our balanced diet?
Yes, you see, very beautiful question. This is a practical question. Many people do this. They have the television on, and some rubbish is going on, and the meal is very nutritious. Now, what is the impact of this? You know, your Annamaya Kosh may be nourished by the meal you are having, but your Pranmaya Kosh and Manomaya Kosh are in terribly erratic state due to the visual. That is also ahar, you know, what you are seeing, that is visual ahar. Whatever you take in through the senses is ahar. The definition of ahar means aharati iti ahar. What your senses take in, whether your eyes or your mouth or your ears, it's all ahar. So you are taking in bad food through eyes, but taking nutritious food through mouth. So what is the use of that? That is why if all of the ahar is nutritious, then only it will result in good health. Your pranamay kosh and manomay kosh is sensitive to all kinds of energies. The annamay kosh may not know that. So you feel, oh, I'm safe, nothing is happening. If suppose you're watching a violent scene and eating, your mind and prana are feeling the jolt of it. It's equivalent to you feeling there are mirror neuron effect is there also. And it's equivalent to you suffering. So what is your eating nutritious food will have no value there. So take care of all this. Remember, ahar is everything that your senses consume is ahar. And unless you regulate everything, merely taking nutritious food will not solve the problem.
Thank you.
I think time is up.
Yes, Mataji, it's sharp 12:30 and
Yes.
there are some questions, but with your permission, we will take a note of it. And if we could send it over to you and if you could
Yeah, sure.
answer them and send it back, we'll share
Yeah.
it with the
Sure.
faculty members. Thank you so much. Once again, Mataji, it was such a blessing to listen to you today on this topic. It was very, very enriching and enlightening. Thank you so much.
Thank you.